It is 8 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And I am so excited to get started and welcome Sophy Yohannan from Boston Scientific. She just informed me she has 18 years in the field of clinical research, studied medicine before that. Welcome, Sophy. If everyone could, maybe you can raise your hand to clap for Sophy. And today we are going to be sharing our 3 keys to success and a lot of other tips to really how you can enter and do incredibly well in the field of clinical research. So first of all, Sophy, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And I just want to jump right in, and I want to hear your story. How, what's your education, and then how did you get into this field of clinical research?
So I graduated medical school with every intention of practicing clinical medicine. But while I was getting ready for my training, my post-grad training, I got pregnant with my first child. And my husband was also working 70 hours a week at the time. And my parents and in-laws were both still working. Nobody wants to retire. So we were faced with a decision. What do we do? You know, if both parents are working 70, 80 hours a week, what do you do with a newborn, right? And if the grandparents are also still working, you know, that's one thing about this country. In a lot of professions, especially medicine, clinical medicine, it's not really friendly towards double income household parents. You know, we're both working and we're trying to raise a family. I mean, I've always dreamed about having a family, having children. So that was very important to me. So we decided that I wasn't going to continue my training at that time. I was going to stay home with my kids. I stayed home for 2 years. And at that time, I was already in clinical research. I was already, because I wanted to publish. So that's a track when you're in medicine and you want to, you know, get into residency and fellowship. If you can get published, it really helps your case. So that's how I got into clinical research.
Wow. And first tip for all of you out there, which is you want to have a family, you want to spend time with your family, and you want to have a nice career. Mm-hmm. And Americans work so many hours, and especially those doctors, right? Your husband and you're working 70 hours a week. This is a career, first of all, where you can really be fulfilled, where it's not just a job. You know, so many people, Sophy, they go to their job every day and they just can't wait to get home and then get off. And they're just trying to get out of work. What I've found in clinical research is we love going to work.
Yes.
And it affords us the time to spend time with our family. We can make a great living and we can spend time with our kids. It's absolutely incredible. Okay, so you spent a couple of years at home, you're already in clinical research, your kids were getting a little bit older, and then how did you get back in, and where did you go from there?
So when the second one turned 2 or almost 2 years old, I went back as part-time in clinical research. And before that, I had worked in a psychiatry and neurology clinic where they were conducting clinical research. So I used that experience to springboard my career after maternity. And I got into a group that was doing gynecology clinical trials. So GOG, those cooperative group trials, as well as investigator-initiated trials and sponsored trials. It was a small operation, you know, just out of a clinic. We had one PI, an OBGYN who was very, very busy and just needed—
PI is principal investigator, who's in charge of the trial at the site.
Yes, a very, very busy physician who was covering 3 hospitals and owned the clinic and was managing a lot. And so he needed staff that he could trust, trustworthy people who knew what they were doing and were passionate about their work. And so that's how I found my place. That's how I fit in there. And that's how I got started getting back onto my career path after maternity.
And so you were running those trials in that gynecology with that PI. And how long were you there before you went to your next spot?
I was there for less than 2 years, actually, because there was this phenomenon that happened in the East Coast later than the West Coast, which is large hospital systems buying up small clinics. And so his clinic was at risk and getting bought up by a large conglomerate, and my position was at risk. So before I was laid off, I started looking for something else.
You
And
probably found
luckily,
something.
yeah, so luckily I found a position in oncology. It wasn't in gynecology, but some of us, we kind of just take what you can get and then you find the right fit later on. So I found an open position in oncology at State University of New York at Stony Brook, here in New York and Long Island. And there I got to work with bone marrow transplant and stem cell researchers and physicians and nurses. And I was an inpatient and outpatient, and I got to be involved in stem cell harvesting and freezing and thawing and all of that kind of stuff. I know.
Wow, and that's really interesting. So you're
Yeah.
there for a while, and then how many other roles have you had up until this point?
So
Oh, maybe that's the wrong question to ask.
well, from there, I moved into a manager role in cardiology, and that's where I found my niche in cardiology. There's something about cardiology that is just enthralling. It's just the physics behind these devices that we use in cardiology. That's what attracted me, and I never left. So I moved into a manager position right there at the university in cardiology, and then I was recruited to Boston Scientific as a CRA, a monitor. So I spent 5 years as a monitor, and then I landed my current position as a clinical evaluation scientist. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. So you've been in a lot of positions, but the story is what I want people to take away from this is there's a lot of opportunity in this field. Once you're in, there's so much room for advancement. And in fact, now, Sophie, the advancement seems to be faster than ever before because I don't know if you recently looked, there's over 70,000 open positions.
Yes.
All kinds of sites around the country are contacting us asking, hey, can we hire your graduates? We need students. We need people who are trained and qualified to work in clinical research. Now, so many people apply on their own and they think they're qualified, but they're not getting the interviews. They're not getting in the field. So can we just kick things off and talk a little bit about what is clinical research? Because I think that's so important because you really need to have a foundation. And can you just for our audience, answer that question? What is clinical research?
Excellent question. And this is what I say to strangers, like at the airport, who I'm sitting next to on the plane, who asks, what do you do? And so then I have to answer this question. A lot of people don't understand clinical research. So we live in, especially in this country, and in a time of evidence-based medicine, right? So every pill, every injection, every vaccine, every device, every procedure that is approved to be used on patients for different conditions, everything has to go through clinical research, clinical trials for FDA approval. We gather evidence about the safety and efficacy of these pills and the effectiveness of these devices in order to make sure that they're at least as safe and effective as what's on the market already, so that we're not offering patients something that is unsafe or that's not going to work.
It has to work better, right? And working better can mean different things because what we know is about, you have a new drug and it might work on 80% of the population, but it doesn't work on the other 20%. So then we come out with a new one that might work on different demographics. Yes. So all of a sudden we're trying to put together the whole picture so we can help everybody. And I have a slide that we put together that I want to share because you hit on these points. What is clinical research, folks? It's exactly what Sophie was talking about. We're investigating, we're testing new treatments. And it sounds like, Sophie, you have worked on the pharmaceutical side. You've also worked on the device side. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then we have here also procedures like surgeries and things like that. Have you worked in that area as well?
Yes, because on the device side, when I was back when I was at Stony Brook, I worked in, like I said, cardiology, and it was both drug studies as well as device studies. But the devices were mostly implantable devices like pacemakers and defibrillators, ablation catheters that were temporarily implanted into the patient's heart to deliver energy to ablate those circuits that cause arrhythmia. So yeah, I was a part of all of those procedures. Thankfully, I had the backing by those clinical folks at Stony Brook to allow me to be in the lab for every single patient's procedure. So I have been witness to hundreds of procedures, and sometimes 2 hours, 3 hours, 6 hour long procedures. And we had to wear lead because of the exposure to radiation within the lab. And sterile techniques and things like that. So that was exciting for me. I
Yeah,
think
but you don't
that
have
was,
to be in that situation. You can
you know,
also be working, for example, now more and more people know about clinical research because of these vaccine trials and the
yep,
therapeutic trials for COVID-19. And with
yep,
those trials, you don't have any lead. All you're doing, you're enrolling the patients in the trial. You're
yes.
making sure they're getting it's blinded. Can you explain the blinded in these trials? Because there's a lot of
Yes.
terminology that you need to know to work in this field. And we bring it up, but people are like, blinded, what does that mean?
Yeah,
So let's
even
say,
in
yeah, go
yeah, even
ahead.
in cardiology, we had drug trials that were randomized controlled trials that had nothing to do with procedures.
Yeah.
And in oncology and psychology and neurology and gynecology too. So remember Eliquis, which is an anticoagulant developed by Pfizer. I worked on that trial. So we were randomized, the patients were randomized 1-to-1, Eliquis
Were
versus
you double blinded?
no, it was a single blind at that
Okay,
time.
can you just explain to the audience single blind versus double blind and what randomized means? Because
Yes.
we're throwing out terminology and people need to know this to work in the field.
Yes. Very good. Yeah. So single blind means that usually the patient is blinded to what they're getting. So the patients are divided into two cohorts, and half of the patients randomly selected, half the patients get the treatment drug, and the other half get the placebo. But they should look exactly alike, smell alike, and feel the same, taste the same when they take the pill. So the patient has no idea whether they're getting the drug or the placebo. However, if it's single blind, the physician and the research staff know what the patient is getting, just the patient doesn't know. If it's double blind, neither the patient nor the research team knows what the patient is getting, and that's to avoid both biases. So that's the gold standard.
Beautiful. And to get in this field, there's so much terminology and there's so much information you need to know. We're here to talk about the keys to success in the field. And the first one is really knowledge is power. And to work and to be successful in the field of clinical research, you have to have training. You have to be a learner. You have to be curious because you're talking about all these different trials you're working on, different new drugs. We're looking at safety and efficacy. It's evidence-based. It's always new. So learning is so important in this field, and actually having an understanding of the basics just to get in. I think that's one piece that people are missing when they apply to these jobs. They think they know it, but they don't really.
I wish I had something like clinical research fast track when I first started, because I'll tell you, I struggled in the beginning. The first few years, even with my medical background, I struggled with all of the terminology and, clinical research, these protocols, the way they're developed, they're very clear, they're very tight, and you have to follow the protocol exactly. And you really need to know your FDA regulations and ICH guidelines. Those are really, really important. And I kind of was thrown in the ocean and asked to swim without any training. It was really difficult.
But that was 18. So Sophie, that was 18 years ago. And nothing like this existed. In fact, besides a clinical research fast track, I don't know if anyone else actually teaches the practical knowledge that what you need to know on day one in the job. Because why? Because Sophie is the one teaching you. She's in it every day. Well, you're one of our instructors, and we have so many more. So we talked about the learning and training as a key to success, but I want to jump into the next one, because we were talking the other day and you said how relationships are
Oh,
so important. Can you expand on that to me? It was a good conversation. I want to share
it's,
this with everyone.
it's the number one thing. If I could only choose one thing that you could get, one pearl, one gem, one piece of chocolate that I could give you, it would be this. Maintain your relationships, build your relationships, work on your relationships. You know how people say that marriage is a second job? You have to work at it. You have to have date nights. You have to, you can't just assume that it's going to be fine. It's the same thing with your professional relationships. Never burn bridges. None of us are islands. We can't do it alone. No matter what your expertise is, no matter how hard you work, no matter how sincere you are, no matter how great your work ethic, you as one person cannot do it alone. You need your team. And so it's really, really important to build and work on and maintain those professional relationships.
And in clinical research, we're working with teams. It's a team sport. We work with a group, and then 2 years later, we see the same people on different trials. So we're constantly running into each other. And one of the cool things about clinical research fast track is our students walk into our class and they instantly have a community of connections. Through all of our instructors, our directors, and all of our graduates. When our graduates go apply to jobs, often it's our other graduates hiring them, which is so great to have sort of those connections. So there's two types of relationships that we're talking about, and connections are really nice. But I also want to talk about something that I know is near and dear to your heart, because you talk about it, and that's mentorship. Can we talk a little bit about that? Have you had mentors in your life that have helped you in your career?
Oh my goodness, I would not be here without them. There's no way I would have reached where I have without my mentors. I have had at least one mentor at every single stage of my career, from my undergraduate to my postgrad to my first position in clinical research, all the way up through today. I have more than one mentor, and I reach out to them. I still reach out to my mentors from 2001, 2002, the physicians that I worked with at the time, the seniors in clinical research who had years ahead of me, had that knowledge that I was thirsty for. I still reach out to them, send out Christmas cards, and once in a while I'll text them. Sometimes they ask me, "Hey, Sophie, can you help me interview this person?" Or, "What do you think about this candidate?" Or, "I'm looking for such and such. Where can I find a person like this?"
So you said you've had many mentors. What do you feel like is some of the biggest impacts they've had on your career? And do you have any stories for us?
Oh my goodness, so many stories. Direction. I think direction is the greatest impact. In clinical research, there are so many directions you can take. I mean, the choices are limitless. Whether you want to be, at the site level, or you want to be at the CRO level or the sponsor level, or you want to work for the NIH, or you want to work for FDA. I mean,
hold on. You're bringing up so many different topics, and I know people are going to have questions. So if you have questions, everyone, please feel free to type them in the Q&A. And that way we can answer your questions while Sophie is talking. She talked about sponsor, CRO, site level, PI initiated trials. There's so many directions you can go and so many roles. Sophie, sometimes people come to me and they say, I typed in clinical research in a job site, and there's thousands of jobs. And what is this? There's QA, there's compliance, there's monitoring, there's coordinating, and there's drug safety,
data management, there's project management, all kinds of things. Yes.
And I think having a mentor, like you said, helps you navigate those roles. So many people, they have great qualifications. They take our course, and before our course, they were just applying to the wrong roles. With the mentorship, the support, the training, then if you have the right training qualifications and you apply to the right role, you get hired, like our students are, in about, 2 to 3 weeks, right? You have to interview. Some of these sites are a little slow on the interview. It can take 3-4 weeks before you're hired. So, our students are getting hired within a month or so. And you are now at Boston Scientific.
Mhm.
Can you explain what Boston Scientific is and what you do
Sure.
there?
So Boston Scientific is a large medical device company. I think we have about 40,000 employees globally. And we started in Boston, as the name says, but expanded all over the world. Our arrhythmia campus, for whom I work, is located in Minneapolis. And now we have multiple different therapeutic areas. So we make devices for cardiology patients, cardiac patients, for endocrine, for neuromod, for interventional oncology, for peripheral intervention, lots of different medical devices that are saving lives, that are helping to improve quality of living, prolonging lives. And we are constantly looking at quality, constantly looking, improving our quality. So that's what I love about working at Boston Scientific. And there are so many roles, so many different directions you can take. I told you that last year, a year ago, I made the shift between a CRA monitor to my current role, which is a clinical evaluation scientist. Without a mentor, there's no way I could have figured this out, that I would be good at this, so that's the value of a mentor.
It really is. And we actually assign all of our students and pair them with a mentor in our organization, but then we encourage them to go and reach out to others in the field because, creating a relationship through a program is great, but also finding your own other relationships is sometimes even better. And when you make those connections, I mean, the world is your oyster in this field. There's so much opportunity. I was just speaking with one of our former students. Her name is Mary. And I remember before she took our course, she was working in Tyler, Texas, in a college, and she was a student counselor. And she was making $35,000 a year counseling the students in the college. And then she really wanted to get into clinical research. She took our course, moved to Dallas to be closer to her family, and got hired right away at UT Southwestern. Well,
Wow.
I just caught up with her a few years later. Since that time, she moved on to become what's called a CTA. And now she's an in-house CRA. And this is just the beginning. She's been moving up
That's
every year,
amazing.
more than,
Yeah,
of
that
course, more
CTA
than double
position, that
her
CTA
salary.
position is a very, very lucrative, very interesting position that's newer, I would say. Just in the past 5-6 years, it's become more popular. It was never a standalone position before. And I think that's a great way to transition into industry if you're interested within clinical research. Yeah.
Yeah, so we do have a question in the chat here, and it says, what pathway would someone who doesn't have a medical background take? And I would say about 50% of our students have no medical background. Maybe some have biology degrees or healthcare, public health. Some have English majors. We had a student with a music major, but they all have a passion to advance medicine and work with people, and they love working with the data and information, what you called evidence-based medicine, right? We're looking at the evidence, and they just really wanted to be in the field. So, the third key to success that I want to share with everyone is having what we call grit. And grit is the combination of passion and perseverance. It's having the hard work and being able to stick with it because, our students come in with a variety of backgrounds, but the ones who really focus and who stay with it, a month or two later, they are working in a new career in clinical research.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I have a biostatistician who works with me who does not have a medical background at all whatsoever. But I will tell you, I could not survive without her today because she is the one who makes sure that my evidence is statistically significant. I have the power that I need in my reports. So yeah, you don't have to have a medical background to succeed in clinical research. There are so many pathways. You just have to persevere, like you said.
Right. But I think it's for Carlene who sent in that if you just apply to jobs now, no one's really going to look at you without the proper training and qualifications. So, and she mentioned the word certification. In our field, there's so many different certifications you can get, but really to get the job, they have to see that you're qualified. And that means you have the training, you have the understanding, you can go in and really talk like a clinical researcher and back up that talk with understanding and action. And once you have that, our students are getting hired right out of our classroom before they even complete the program.
And most certifications require 2 years of experience. So if you want your certification as a CRC, as a clinical research coordinator, you have to have a certain number of hours, 2 years worth of hours logged before you can even apply for the exam. And the same thing if you want to apply for the CRA certification exam through ACRP or SOCR, one of those organizations, you have to have 2 years of monitoring experience. So what do you do before that? What do you do to train yourself, to get yourself prepared for this role before you have accumulated that 2 years of experience? Those certifications don't account for that.
Right.
So that's where I think clinical research fast track comes in.
And we're getting a lot of great questions, and I'm going to start taking them because we have Omar asking the question, is there a place for international students? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
As long as you have the ability to work in the United States. So it doesn't matter from where in the world you are. And if anyone who's seen any pictures of our classroom, we're doing it on Zoom now. So Sophie can teach from New York and I can help teach from San Francisco in the same class, which is so much fun. And our students from all over the country. And as long as they have a work permit, when they get out, they get hired. Now, if you are, it doesn't matter where you're born, where you're from, what matters is that you're passionate about healthcare, that you are passionate about this field and you're gaining the qualifications you need to do well. Now, with that said, education's important. And, we have some students with an associate's degree. If you don't have an associate's degree yet, or some kind of medical, like medical assistant or nursing, LVN, then I suggest go get one of those first.
Yeah.
But once you have a bachelor's degree, oh my gosh, Sophie, we had a student, so funny. He was a plumber and he contacted us, and my admissions representative, she said, Dave, you have to talk to the student. You have to let him take our class. And I'm like, well, we can't take a plumber. No, I mean, no, it's, I always say you can have a lot of different backgrounds. And and I interviewed him, and it turned out he was actually a type 1 diabetic. And it was because of clinical research that he had the pump, the medication, everything he needed to really live a healthy life.
There you go. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing every day.
And I was still worried, but he took the class, and he actually had a bachelor's degree also. So bachelor's degree and plumber, and he was also an electrician. And he took our class. He was hired right away at Covance in a phase 1 unit. I couldn't believe it. He was hired before some of the others with, bachelor's degrees who've been working at a hospital. And I was so happy for him.
Wow.
He's still in the field. I don't know if he's still at Covance, but it's so exciting. So international students, absolutely. Thank you for that question. Okay, here's another question that is, if you have, people are asking about their backgrounds. If you have a PhD in physiology, if you have this degree, if you're a foreign medical doctor, is this right for you? And the answer is yes. We have so many international medical graduates, foreign doctors, people who have MBBSs from countries.
I'm MBBS.
There you go. There you go. So many people like Sophie, who now is at the top of her field. So having that foreign medical background, you won't be able to work directly in medicine, but you can work in clinical research. With our training, you will be on-ramping into an incredible career. And then you can transfer your medical skills into clinical research. And it's really powerful, really, really powerful. So can you give examples of other roles for people who don't sort of have the medical background? What would they be doing?
Oh my gosh, so many examples. Data management. I work with people who build databases from scratch, just from a template. And that's how we capture our data for our trials. We have no more paper CRFs, case report forms. Those are called CRFs.
There you go. And you go in an interview if you don't know what a CRF is. That's
You
it.
have
You're
to know what a
next.
CRF is. You have to know what source is, and you should have some familiarity or hopefully some sense of comfort with databases, because nowadays over 90% of clinical trials, the data is collected in a database and not on paper. And so who builds those? Somebody has to build those. So, somebody with a computer background does that, and they learn the clinical part that they need to understand in order to build the database along the way. Like I said, I work with a statistician who is brilliant, so their background is in math, in statistics, not in medicine, but I couldn't survive without her. I have a project manager whose background is business, not medicine and not data and not math, just business. And she keeps me on my toes. She makes sure that I'm hitting my deadlines, my goals on time, and I have the right resources, and we are allotting the right amount of time to every project or every sub-project. I work with people who manage the cost and efficiency of trials. I work with
And those people, if you have sort of the business background, we have a lot of students who did business in their own country or business here. Yep. They go into those roles. I want to get to some of these questions. I want to make sure we get to answer all of them. Someone asked us, what is the preferred course for someone with their background? And what we do is we give you the foundation that you need as an off-ramp into this industry. So once you have the foundation, you can go into a more data role. You can go into a patient-facing role like clinical research coordinator. So the foreign medical doctors, they like those patient-facing roles. They can use their healthcare knowledge and they want to be coordinators. Other people, we had a student from NYU who's really into biostats. He went into the biostats role. He's working at Beth Israel over with Harvard University in Boston. You probably know them. So there's but everyone needs to have the core competencies, that foundation. But Tina asks, when is the next boot camp? So we just added another class. So we have a class coming up. November 13th is the start in the classroom. You'd have to actually call our office tomorrow to sign up for that class because there's some pre-work to do the week before. So next week, folks in that November 13th class are going to be studying on their own, reading and learning a little bit about the phases of research, study, design, history, terminology before we start in the classroom.
Pre-work and there's homework, guys. You got to do all the.
It's a lot of work in a short amount of time. So after the pre-work, we go in for 8 days in a row, Saturday to Saturday, and 10 hours a day. So everyone takes off that week of work and it's 10 hours a day. It's really intensive. After those 8 days, our students are getting interviews and offers. We also have a class December 4th coming up. So November 13th and then December 4th. Those are the last 2 of the year. They are filling up and we try to keep them small so that you have a really good interaction with your instructors. Bettina, thank you for that question.
I believe I'm part of that November 13th stretch. I'm there on the 15th teaching.
Oh, great.
So those of you who sign up, I'll be so excited to meet you and go through.
And can you preview what's your topic? Are you teaching protocol that day?
Protocol dissection, my favorite. I like all the topics, but this is definitely my favorite. Protocol dissection. Let's break it down. Let's rip it apart. Let's look at every single section and make sure you really understand it. Yeah, that's what I like.
I love it. So Judith asked a question, how does this work for those already practicing in the US and want to change their career? If you are a doctor and you want to add clinical research to your practice or move into clinical research, guess what? There's huge demand for trained PIs. Mm-hmm. And just going through our training will position you to get into so many different roles. I have what we call site networks. And what that means is these are research sites that embed in physicians' offices and hospitals around the country. And they need more and more physicians to run the trials. And they're constantly asking us, hey, do you have any physicians that are trained in clinical research that we can hire? So it's a great opportunity for physicians too. It doesn't matter if you live in New York or San Francisco or anywhere in between, because our classes are on Zoom now. And we've been doing that for the last 2 years, right, Sophie? I mean, ever since COVID.
I'm in New York, so, and you're in San Francisco, and we're making it work.
Great. I think we're getting through all of those questions. There's so many. Are there remote positions in clinical research, Sophie? Maybe you can take that one.
Yeah, you're looking at me. You're looking at the remote position person right here. And my home office, where I work, or where they send my salary, is in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I live and work in New York. So it's a good 1,000 miles between. And I do go into the office. Before the pandemic, I used to go into the office 3-4 times a year. And now I haven't been to the office in over a year, and we probably will decrease that, but we connect, we use Microsoft Teams, and we connect every day. And we have access to the same files, to the same trainings, everything that, our in-house people have access to. So yes, and my role is not the only one that's remote. There are so many roles that are remote.
And what really happened when COVID-19 hit in March of 2020, we had been a little slow in the field to put everything from paper into electronic records. And, healthcare had gone electronic medical record years ago, but in clinical research, we had a lot of paper source documentation. And then when the pandemic hit, everyone pivoted. So all of our software, all of our documents, everything started moving online, and it created more jobs. Now we need more people to get everything transitioned up to speed. We also have many of our students and instructors working at vendors, and these are the people making the software. And also that we have now what's called virtual trials or hybrid virtual trials, where some of the people in the clinical trial, they don't have to go to the hospital for all their visits. They can do it through a HIPAA approved video conferencing, just like this. So half your visits.
Centralized trials are very big now. Yep, we can collect a lot of good data that way.
And they're also using all these devices, things like Fitbits and different devices that people can wear in their own home, so they don't have to always go in. So the types of roles that are remote are actually kind of exploding right now. I would say, maybe 30-40% of the roles now are remote, Sophie?
At least. The reason is because we learned over the past 18 months during this horrible pandemic, one of the silver linings is that we learned how to interact effectively remotely, because we had no choice, right? So necessity is the mother of invention. Right? So we figured out how to interact remotely, how to work remotely, how to send files back and forth, how to train people remotely, how to audit remotely, everything that has to be done, most everything that has to be done, we can do remotely. And roles that used to be, no, this person has to be in-house, they need to be in the office, at a meeting. Now we realize, no, they don't have to be. They can do this from any location. And if we open up the role to people from more locations, geographies, we're getting a larger pool of applicants now. Actually, we don't have to limit it to, just Minneapolis or just Minnesota. We've opened up a lot of these roles to, all across the nation and sometimes international too. And I'm seeing a lot of companies do that. So it's a great thing.
It is, but there is a lot of demand. I do want to share some of these slides because we talked about our keys to success. And so we talked about you need the training and the learning to get into the field. And this is a lifelong learning profession. So if you love to learn, if you're curious, if you're ready to first get trained, get into the field, this could be a great field for you. We talked about relationships and mentorship and how important that is, and how you really need the connections to help you get to your next positions, but also the guidance of knowing where to apply and how to apply. And Sophie, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we coach all of our students. We help them update their resumes, their cover letters. And when they have an interview, this is a true story. And this is a really funny story. So we have career coaches that work at Clinical Research Fast Track. And Julia, one of our career coaches, she just sent a message to us where she prepared a student for her interview, and she went in. It was the University of Pennsylvania. So she went in the University of Pennsylvania, and she had prepared for the interview with Julia. And what we do is we practice all these questions. And she came back from her interview, this student, her name's Anita, and she just said, Julia, you're a genius. How did you know everything they were going to ask?
Yeah.
And well, the reason is we've been in the field for a while, and we have all of our instructors tell us what you're going to ask when you're interviewing. So we have just collected all of those questions, and it gives our students a time to prepare and study. And then, of course, they're getting great offers and they're doing so well in the field. So I'm really thrilled for that one student in particular, but so many of our students are getting that sort of secret tip.
I wish you had tipped some of the people who applied that I had to interview, actually. That would have been good, because there are still so many people out there who don't know how to write a really comprehensive CV, and there are people who don't prepare well for an interview. I think employers really appreciate good preparation. Not only is it good for the candidate who's applying, but it's inspiring for an employer too. And there are lots of open positions right now. So
yeah, and then we have another question from a nurse who's just graduating. There's such demand for nurses all over the country and in clinical research too. So we have nurses taking our program, and then we're connected to recruiters who work in the nursing, and there's many groups in therapeutic areas, from oncology to cardiology and many others, that are specifically needing a trained RN and with clinical research experience. And we are sending those nurses to those positions. And wow, Sophie, the salaries are mind-blowing for those nurses. So congratulations to you. Who was it that asked that question? Nessia, you're going to have a great career in nursing. And if you take our program, you can have a fabulous career in clinical research too. What's the starting salary ranges, please? So that's a great question. It really depends on your background. So for those RNs who take our course, they're starting at very high salaries, very high. We had one nurse who took our class, and she was offered a starting salary of $120,000 a year, and she actually turned it down for a different position. She had multiple offers and took a different position that just fit exactly what she wanted. And then others who are coming out maybe just with a bachelor's degree, they're starting at about $45,000 a year. But guess what? They're not staying there for very long. They are moving up so fast, but the key is to get in the field, to get going, and you need the proper training, get in the field. And people start at 45, 55, 60, some 65, but with only a bachelor's degree and coming right out of college, you would be in the lower range. With more career experience and you're bringing transferable skills, you would be on the higher range of that 45 to 65. And then from there, the sky's the limit. It really is. Oh, we're running out of time, Sophie. Sorry, that's why I'm talking so fast. How about those with an MPH? Say, I have an MPH as well. Great background for this field. You do need that specialization in clinical research, but there's so many opportunities for someone like you. Really exciting field. So, Sophie, we've talked about so much. I'm going to run through our slides really quickly. We've talked about the training that you will need to get in the field. We talked about the importance of relationships, and we talked about, you still have to work hard to do really well. This is our phone number, our email. No one's there now. If you call us now, no one's going to pick up. It's almost, oh my gosh, it's almost 8:45 Eastern time. But call us tomorrow, email us. We still have room in that November 13th class and then December 4th. Those are the last two of the year. And those students will be probably starting in clinical research at the beginning of January. Really exciting time. And Sophie, before we close, what is it that you love the most about clinical research?
I love being on the cutting edge all the time. I like being the first person to know something. That's a gratifying feeling for me. And I also like being able to use my medical background to further a treatment and contribute to society while still maintaining my home life. It's a good balance, and I really enjoy that.
I love that. And this is a field where all of us can really make an impact. We're advancing medicine, and we're working with great people. And my favorite thing about clinical research is I get to work with people like you. We have incredible instructors. We have incredible students who are coming through our program, and we get to help them really achieve the careers of their dreams, where they can work hard, they can make an impact, advance medicine, and take care of their family, raise those teenagers, right? And
Yes.
and Sophie, really enjoy your time with them now. I know before you know it, they're going to be in college. So I just want to thank you for spending the evening with us. It's always, always a pleasure. Did you have any last words for the group?
My last words would be, keep at it, right? So know what you want, know where you're going and how to get there, and don't give up. That's it.
Beautiful. Well, Sophy Yohannan, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's such a pleasure to talk to you. It's an honor to be able to work with you. Have a wonderful evening. And thanks to all of you who joined us this evening. Please, if you have further questions, give us a call, send us an email. I'm going to put that up one more time. There's our phone number. Take a screenshot of our email address. Visit our website at clinicalresearchfasttrack.com. And we look forward to hearing from all of you. Thank you and have a great night, everyone.